Welcome to Three Films and a Podcast, the show where destiny brought together three friends to enhance each other's cinematic journey by watching three new movies in a series of themed rounds. There is no claim of ownership on any film footage used in this episode, as all film footage is owned in its entirety by the copyright holders. And just like every car in Too Fast, Too Furious, this podcast contains spoilers. Enjoy!
You thought it was your wife, but it was your sister. Now you have an angry inbred son coming after everything you've built. Does this sound like you? Then you might be Arthur in the 1981 fantasy epic, Excalibur. Welcome back to Three Films and a Podcast, soon to be Unsung Gems. We are three folks challenging each other and all of you to watch movies you've never seen before, but we will be challenging you to come on our pod and advocate for a movie that you feel is disrespected. And we will decide whether that movie is, in fact, an unsung gem. But that's not us right now. For now, you can find us anywhere at Three Films Pod. You can find us on YouTube. You already have here at the Three Films and Podcast channel. But stay tuned for our new handles. We will be releasing those shortly. We may have already released them depending on when you're watching this. But I'm joined tonight, as always, by Ben Lawhorn and Tyler Beck.
Hello from the past. Well, I guess that's like every time, right? That's like that Mitch Hedberg joke, like, let me show you a picture of when I was younger. It's like every picture is a picture of you when you're younger. Like, there's no picture of you when you're older.
You froze me with that. I was like, wait, was that from the movie? I don't have a cool movie quote to say right now. But.
No, I was thinking of whoever's listening to this whenever this comes out,
right.
Like hello from August.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have easily been a Merlin quote, you know?
I know. Yeah, he had so many bizarre, weird one-liners.
Some weird Helen Mirren line, like hello from the past. Like, okay.
That silver helmet gleaming and hurting my eyes as I'm watching the movie.
What a headpiece.
Oh, for sure. This is the first movie in our Legends round, and this is one of the last rounds we'll be covering on this podcast in our, traditional three films format. Which is kind of crazy. Yeah. Historically, we based our selections off of just a category that we've nominated. I had nominated Legends as the round. We'll be changing that our category format in the new podcast, which we won't get into. But I chose Excalibur because actually this was we nominated this fairly early in the year.
This was a long time ago. It's funny, I was thinking about this because this was I think this was your first nomination. And then it ran into it was going to come out the month that the Oscars was. And then we had stop motion animation and we happened to have two movies nominated for animation. And I was like, well, what if we swap that out with Legends? And you're like, yeah, cool. That's great. And then something else happened where it's like, well, what if we swapped it out with Legends? So this was, I think, literally supposed to be like the third thing that we talked about. And it's end up being the 12th one that we talk about, but we're finally here. We get to talk about my last Tom Cruise pick next week. Cause I remember doing that for the first three rounds. I wanted all three Tom Cruise movies. So, we'll get into that, but yeah, this has been around for a bit, at least internally.
Yeah. I think we made the selections last year, but here we are. We were not in a hurry to get to them, and I have no problem with covering them right now. I bring up the time that we nominated this because when I had nominated this, we were in the middle. I guess pop culture was in the middle of the Snyder Cut discourse. I think the Snyder Cut had come out. A lot of people had a lot of opinions on it. You can check out our Snyder Cut episode if you want to hear ours. But basically, it's documented that Zack Snyder had cited this movie as some kind of influence. I don't know if he just said that he liked it or that he was influenced by it. So I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to see it primarily because I hadn't heard of it. I've always been interested in Arthurian legends. So I wanted to check this out. I think also the Green Knight had come out that year as well. And so it was kind of on the mind. I wanted to see what from this movie might have bled into Zack Snyder films, which aside from long-winded introduction to characters.
I'm
not sure much. I didn't pull much from it, but I wanted to hear what your guys' experience was with it. I'll give a few more of mine in a minute, but Tyler, what were your feelings of this movie?
So this thing, it ended up being like worse and better than I expected it to be, like simultaneously. I had some expectation that I would like this movie, just because I like these types of stories. You know, like it's well documented. I love the Lord of the Rings movies, Game of Thrones, all those types of things. I know I keep telling Matt he needs to watch The King, that Netflix movie with Timmy Shams. Ben, you should watch it too. It's pretty rad. Honestly, I think it's a pretty good unsung gem.
And Bobby Pat's, right?
If I'm thinking forward, what's that?
Isn't it Tim Shams and Bobby Pat's?
All our Pats in it.
It's a good show. But so, anyways, I just like this kind of stuff. So I had a feeling I would at least like the story. I had concerns about, just their ability to put a story like this on screen, just with the limitations of the time. I know it was made in the early 80s. And I guess all of that sort of came true. I kind of thought, like, I don't really know how to articulate it, but basically, I just felt like I loved the story so much, and I loved how it was paced, and I loved all the characters they chose to put on screen. I mean, these are classic characters. Like, this story, in my mind, is sort of like the template for this type of story. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This, to me, is almost like the genesis of, like, kings, queens, and magic, right? Man, I've completely lost my train of thought. Merlin, he's got me, the dragon's breath. Yes. I don't know, man. I ended up having a lot of fun with it, and I just liked how it sort of felt like a Reader's Digest telling of the story. It was like, this happened, and then this person said this, and then this happened, and we move on. Because we get a ton of story in a couple of hours.
Oh, yeah.
And quite frankly, I liked how it was easy to digest, pun intended. It was easy to follow along, and it was just it was just a fun movie to watch, despite some of the limitations. Like, especially some of the, like, the battle sequences just it really pulled me out of the story, just because it didn't look great, and I don't want to be too critical, because I can tell that they tried to make it great.
They can't all be Helm's Deep.
Yeah, they can't all be Helm's Deep. They can't all be the Battle of the Bastards, and I get that, but it really was pretty distracting. So all in all, I had a really great time. I really loved watching it. I thought it looked really cool. Apparently it was nominated for an Oscar for cinematography, which is well deserved. I loved all of the cool, like, green backlighting they put on stuff, and all of the fog, and all of, like, just the moodiness with, like, the rich color palette. So all in all, I had a really good time watching it. I'd probably watch it again. But it just was like, there were some moments it was just like, this is pretty rough, pretty corny, and it killed the magic for me. But all in all, it's a solid flick for sure.
Yeah, in not a great way, this movie just made me want to watch a different movie. I think sometimes you can watch something and you're just like, oh, cool, I'm gonna keep going.
I'm in the mood.
Yeah. It's like, let's keep this going. But instead, like, while I was watching, I was like, man, I just want to throw on Holy Grail so bad. Like, I would like, I feel like they told that story. Like, obviously it's a whole different genre. It's a different everything, but like
Black Knight,
I'm just not having a great time here. It's like, yeah, like it was more, the parts of it were more interesting than the whole, if that makes sense. Like, it was just like, oh, young Helen Mirren, that's awesome. Honestly, like, old Helen Mirren, any Helen Mirren, great job. Like, I'm stoked to see her. But this was like Liam Neeson's first feature film. That was cool.
Yeah,
because it was him. But for a while there, I was like, is that Liam Neeson? Like, it looks like him.
Yeah.
But it could just be really close doppelganger. But it's like, oh no, that's actually Liam Neeson. That's great.
Yeah.
And we get Patrick Stewart, which always happy about. And then, as a fan of Hereditary, Gabriel Byrne is in it. And it was just kind of cool to see him not as like the dad who's getting burned alive in a horror movie. I was like, oh yeah, this guy, like, he gets to do other stuff too. That's kind of cool. So it was interesting. I mean, John Boorman, like, looking at just a couple movies before this, the guy directed Deliverance, which is just, it's a fantastic piece of cinema. It's a great movie. Granted, he followed that up with Zardoz, which is that, like, Sean Connery movie. Have you guys seen him where he almost has like the Borat, like, swimsuit on, where it's like this red Oh, you guys, I mean, I'll put a picture of it up, but it's like basically the Borat swimsuit and he has this like ponytail down. I don't know. It's something else, but,
sounds like he's doing a good job.
I mean, he's on track. He's doing great. So, good old John Borman killing it. But yeah, I don't know. It was just some of the dramatic moments of it, were just a lot to take in. I mean, one of the funniest moments to me, because it wasn't even necessarily, it was meant to be sexual, but it was more funny to me. It was like to start off, like he pretends to be someone else to sleep with someone, and it's like, all right, well, this is not great, like what are you doing here? Yeah, it's a bummer. But they're like face to face, and he just like rips her shirt down and just like cocks his head to the left and just goes right in on that boob. I'm like, all right, man, like you're just going right for it. Like you're just going right at it. It's like, it was more humorous than anything else. I'm like, this is not like titillating or anything like that. Like, this is just kind of funny. This is what's happening right now.
Truly from the dark ages.
Yeah, exactly. It was something else, but like any movie, none of us like to shit on any movie. Like everyone's trying to do something. And I think there were definitely parts of it that were interesting. I think some of the cinematography was actually kind of good, like, I mean, set design. I liked the round table thing, and it's kind of cool. Like you said, Tyler, like these stories are kind of fun, and it's fun to think about it in terms of like just the historical, like Lancelot and all that kind of stuff. Like, oh yeah, I know Sword in the Stone. Like, that's cool. That's great. But the big takeaway from me is that Tyler will know this, given our many days spent in California, but my favorite pizza place is Round Table Pizza. And all I wanted to do after this movie was eat pizza, because he kept talking about the round table the whole time. It's like, well, now I just really want some pizza and to watch Holy Grail. So I was curious.
Mission accomplished.
They did it. Yeah, they killed it. I was curious, Matt, like where you heard of this movie. So it's good to like learn that backstory, because as I was watching it, I was like, was this a Steve thing? Like, did Steve tell him about this? Like, I'm curious what Steve's take is on Excalibur.
I'm positive Steve's going to listen to this. I'm positive he has an opinion on this movie, and I don't think he's seen it.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
That's the best.
Yeah, that sounds accurate. I'm stoked to see that Letterboxd review. Like,
and he will. Yeah, he'll tell me about it. For sure.
But yeah, I don't know. Just like, honestly, anything, like, for the most part, I'm glad to have checked it out. Like again, there's plenty of faces in here that you kind of recognize. Like, oh, cool. It's like, I wonder if at some award ceremony 30 years later, Liam Neeson and Helen Mirren, like, man, do you remember that Excalibur movie? Like, that was fucking weird, right? Like, that was kind of like, what a weird movie that was, But I feel like some of these people just have these things to talk about, or it's just like,
John Borman isms.
Yeah. Right. It's like, what was he doing? What was going on with that Merlin hat? Like, that was, why not? Yeah. I don't know. It was fun to have watched it. I feel like we're going to experience some very different type of movies. Like, we all interpreted Legend very differently. So I'm excited to see how this round plays out. Cause I know with Tyler's pick, we're talking about arguably one of the most important movies in cinema history, that's like ever been made. And then I picked one with Tom Cruise and Mia Sara. So I don't know. I'm stoked to see how this plays out, but I think this was a good,
this round is the epitome. Yeah. It was the epitome of like what we sought out for with the pod to begin with. Yeah. So it's nice to, like, I guess, sort of be ending. I guess I don't know what the release schedule looks like, but we're sort of ending how we began. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. So I guess before we move on to the elevator pitch, I wanted to shout out some things. Ben, you mentioned Merlin's cap, which was something like Merlin. I've always liked the character Merlin, and the costume design for this Merlin just was not my jam. And it kind of felt out of place, and it kind of felt like it took away from how cool he maybe could have been. And you know what? Maybe in 81 he did look cool. But the silver cap was not doing it for me. And I just had the thought throughout, like, a lot of the costuming in this was done very, very well. And so I had this, like, I wondered if during filming, I didn't really wonder, but I made this scenario in my head that, like, the actor was like method acting as Merlin, And when they made the decision, like, you know what, maybe the cap isn't the right choice, he like refused to take it off, like in character. Like, no,
this is what I'm wearing.
This is my magic cap. Like, I can't call the whatever.
He's like really method acting.
Yeah, like Merlin won't take his cap off. We can't. It's part of Merlin. The other thing was,
what if he just showed up? They didn't plan to have that cap at all. He just showed up wearing it, like Jeff like, Bridges and the dude, you know?
Yeah. Hey, I brought this. Like, all right.
He didn't even acknowledge it. They're like, "Will you take that hat off?" What hat?
Guys, he sleeps with that hat on. He won't take it off.
That's his skull. That's part of his body. I also
like Hela in Ragnarok.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing with like the practical effects, I felt like in like 81, I felt like so many of there's just like always so much muck. Like if they didn't have the budget for something, they would just throw in like a big pool of mud that they had like all the actors trudge through. And I just, if you love muck and you love seeing people in full costumes trudging through it, you're going to be happy watching, 40% of this movie, because there's a lot of that.
A lot of muck.
And lastly, I just wanted to call out, if you're a fan of The Last Jedi, I was not anticipating seeing some inspiration from this movie. The Last Jedi, I knew that Rian Johnson had pulled from Arthurian legend for The Last Jedi. There's a lot of parallels there. But there's some sequences, one in which Arthur is getting ready to drive Excalibur into the ground between Lancelot and Guinevere.
Yeah.
Is very much like the Luke igniting the saber over Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is the whole illusion play that Merlin does on Morgana towards the end.
Yeah.
So there's some cool parallels there. But I did want to move on to the elevator pitch.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
As with all of the movies that we have on here, we highly recommend watching them on a small phone screen that you could potentially share with somebody if you happen to be watching it while on the elevator. So I want to know, if you're on the elevator, you need to show this a scene to somebody. What scene are you showing, Ben?
There is a scene, and I don't honestly remember the whole context of it. But King Arthur, I believe, is running back into the castle or something along those lines. Maybe you guys will remember this, but he runs past someone and then he pushes off their head to help him jump up or something, to give him a little bit of a boost.
Yes.
And it's just where is this coming from? This is not there's been no physical comedy like this, throughout the whole movie. And suddenly this guy is just treating this extra like a little bit of a stump. It's I'm going to push myself off of you as I hop up. I don't remember where he was going or what the context was, because I was just so distracted by what is the choice of this? That is so interesting.
The extra beat him in a card game or something before that take.
Yeah, probably. It's probably something
I'm just gonna
that.
Destroy this guy.
Yeah. So I mean that's the scene, but I think I think that's the scene that I would show.
I love that. Yeah, I remember that gave me pause as well.
Yeah.
It's did I just see that right?
I honestly played it back. I rewound it. I was I think that's what that was.
You're wait, what?
two great things had to occur for us to see that. One, it had to happen. And number two, the director made a choice to keep that in the movie.
Yeah. We got it. Next scene. Let's go. Moving on.
Let's do the cut where he pushes off Adam.
Let's see that scene.
Poor Adam. He had to go to the hospital with whiplash after that.
His nose, yeah.
Compressed disc. So guys, Merlin is such a fucking weirdo in this movie.
Yeah, he really is.
He's so weird. I went back and forth from loving to hating him every 10 seconds. There'd be moments where it's what is this guy even doing? But then there were other moments where it was just so ridiculous that I had to respect him for it. And I kind of loved it, I don't remember a lot of the specifics, to be honest. I thought we were recording this episode a few weeks ago, so I watched this a while back. But the scene that really sticks out to me, problematic as it may be, is the dragon's breath scene at the beginning. Then you alluded to it earlier when it's the original king, Arthur's dad, basically.
Uther
just has to go.
Yeah,
Uther has to go and have sex with this queen that's not his, not his wife or whatever. And so the whole of it was just so strange to me, but at the same time it was like kind of not what was happening was cool, but like the way that it happened was cool. You know what I mean? Like the magic and the dragon's breath and all the fog and they shot it at night and it just looked cool and it was magic. And I just feel like if you can get through that, like that's about as much as I can sum this movie up. It's just really fucking weird, but it's really stylish and it's really cool. And if you can handle this much Merlin, and if you can get past what's about to happen, which, I don't think we need to litigate like the sexual politics here. But it's just, I feel like if you're at all interested after this, then you're gonna like the rest of this movie. And if you're not, like, you've seen as much of the movie as you need to see. But I'm a sucker for magic and these types of stories. So despite the unfortunate circumstances, I thought it was all really cool. It's like honestly kind of a metaphor for how I felt about the movie as a whole. It's like it's like, yeah, some of this just is kind of a bummer, but like I'm having fun, so let's just look past it, I guess.
I also
and be happy that they wouldn't have shot that now. I hope.
Yeah, exactly. I thought the scene leading up to it was funny too, the dinner party scene, because the guy's just sitting there looking at his wife, who I don't think we know is Uther's wife at this point. Like, it's just someone who's just dancing, and he's like, I must have her. And then we cut to this really tight shot of Uther's face, who just moves just a little bit, like, oh my God, he's looking at my wife, and then we go back, and the guy again is like, no, we just became allies with him. He's like, I don't care, I must have her. It's just this back and forth, what's happening right now? Who does this woman supposedly belong to? I have no idea what's going on. But some of the scenes leading up to it were funny, to say the least. But
I like how Merlin later, he laments doing that. But he doesn't lament it because it was bad. He laments it because it drained him of all his magic.
He's
just too much.
Yeah.
And he'd take a 7-month nap because of that.
And Arthur wants him to do it, but Merlin basically says, I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that again.
Meatloaf, As long as you give me your firstborn, which also just out of nowhere is actually that kid's mine now. Okay, cool. Yeah, fair trade. Not a big deal.
My elevator pitch. So, and I mentioned this in the beginning, there is a little bit of incest. Spoiler alert. If you watch Game of Thrones, then you're probably not too worried about that. Anyway, Morgana gives birth to Arthur's son Mordred, and little kid Mordred has this really cool gold armor. It's like the coolest armor in the movie.
Easily.
And he looks weird in it and out of place, but also that kind of works perfectly for it. But anyways, there's a scene where he's stringing one of the knights along, and he's just laughing in the forest, and he leads them to some dead bodies. It's such a bizarre scene.
Knew it.
Yeah.
You guessed right.
I knew it. I was like, this is Matt's scene. So I was going to write it down and mail it to you so I could prove I was right. I fucking knew you would pick this.
For those of you listening, Tyler plays a game with himself every movie we watch to guess what my elevator pitch is going to be. Because if I'm being true to form, I try to pick the most bizarre thing that I witnessed in the movie. So in this case, it's the Golden Knight.
It's the gold cherub boy on a horse leading someone to all these men hanging. Yeah.
Super bizarre. And then in the middle of the scene, there's a really gross scene where the crow pecks at an eyeball.
Eye? Yeah. That was intense.
Yeah, that was gnarly.
A lot of craziness in that scene. But it wouldn't be an episode of Three Films and Podcast if we didn't make an effort to include a Rushmore of some kind. And I figured we could make a very good reverse Rushmore out of Excalibur.
These are OR scrubs. Oh, are they?
And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go first. I thought the ending of this movie was super awesome. The scene specifically starting when I think it was Parsifal throws the sword back to the lady in the lake and she catches it. I thought that was just like a super cool ending. Then he does go back. There's a little bit more. He goes back to find Arthur and then you just see the ship sailing. I just thought that whole sequence was just like a very solid movie ending. And it felt like the ending of like a trilogy, really. It was all in like one movie. So I thought that was really awesome. But if I'm going to round out the rest of my great movie endings Rushmore, I've got to throw in Knives Out, where she's overlooking the family as the Rolling Stones plays to credits. That's a super awesome ending. Empire Records, where they're dancing on top of the store, is one of my favorite endings of all time. Sing Street, where they're sailing across to London. And I got to throw an honorable mention to Ben's Lord of the Rings cut. You can find it on Twitter.
Yeah.
But his Return of the King
profile.
His Return of the King cut to if it had come out in I think 2007.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what it was.
Lord of the Rings, if it came out in 2007, is one of my favorite movie endings of all time. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, you got it.
Well, speaking of Lord of the Rings and this movie feeling like a trilogy, apparently director John Boorman had the rights to adapt Lord of the Rings, and it fell through, and he made this instead. And in fact, some of this, I don't remember exactly which scene it is, but there's a few scenes that take place in what would have been his Rivendell, which I think is pretty cool. I will say I'm very glad he didn't get to make it. I think it would have been an interesting movie. But we all know how I feel about the Lord of the Rings. So much so that I'm going to make my reverse Rushmore the Wizards Rushmore.
Nice.
And quite honestly, I can fill 3 of the spots with just Lord of the Rings, because we get Gandalf Grey, Gandalf White, and Saruman.
Love it.
Those are the only 3 wizards besides Merlin I can think of right now. So we'll just for now sit at those 4, make up my Rushmore. But I'm sure if I thought about it for a while, I could come up with some better wizards.
No offense, Harry. Harry, Daniel Radcliffe, if you're listening, please like and subscribe, but don't.
Look, I'm not a Potter guy. So, but you're right. It probably
we just lost 3 million subscribers.
They're gone.
Well, it's okay. This podcast is ending soon anyways, so that's okay. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow us at Unsung Gems in the future. I don't know. I just love wizards, despite whether or not I think that this Merlin is a good wizard. I think Merlin in general is a great wizard, and he's a classic character. And again, is sort of like, in a lot of ways, like the archetype or template for a wizard in a story like this. So yeah, I'm going to do a Wizards Rushmore, and it's going to be all Lord of the Rings.
Nice. All right. Mine is going to be one of the most specific and detailed Rushmores that I've ever done.
Finally.
Because this is based around Liam Neeson and what it's going to be, because I found out this is actually the second movie he's in, but this is going to be the Rushmore of second feature films from people who were in Star Wars Episode 1. That's what I'm doing here.
Okay.
The Phantom Menace, because our boy Ian McDiarmid, who was in it, his second movie was Empire Strikes Back as the Emperor, so he's in there. Wow. Liam Neeson was in this. Natalie Portman was in Heat, which is a pretty good movie. And then our boy Jake Lloyd, little Anakin himself, was in Jingle All the Way. And I feel like a lot of those are good second movies from people who starred in the Phantom Menace. So that's what this reverse Rushmore is going to be. It's very detailed.
I love it.
No, that's
very
specific.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
That I'm still I know I'm still
I
processing that. I'm like, I wonder what Ewan McGregor's second feature movie was, and
Shallow Grave, which was also an option because that's also a really good movie. It's like, do I do that? I decided to go lighter with Jingle All the Way. I figured that was good to like kind of mix it up a little bit. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you found a way to put a Sinbad movie in there, so that's great.
Oh, you know what's interesting is Anthony Daniels, I believe. C-3PO. You know what his second movie was? Kind of tie it together with yours, Matt. Is he voiced Legolas in the animated Lord of the Rings movie? That was his second feature film.
Wow.
Oh shit.
Look at that. Maybe I'll swap that out instead. Get a little Lord of the Rings tie together.
There we go.
So yeah, there you go. This is a really weird one, but I was just like, I was kind of struggling. I was like, oh, maybe Patrick Stewart with hair again, but he doesn't have hair. He has a beard, and that's it. I was like, well, let's see what else these other people were in that were in Star Wars Episode 1. So,
well, I mean, Patrick Stewart, I can't tell you how stoked I was to see Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
I get excited to see him every time. And I that hasn't gotten old to me. And I feel like I've always looked forward to seeing him since I can remember. And I don't even know why. Where did that come from? He's just like a good guy to look forward to seeing.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. Like I think mine just came from growing up with a dad who loved Star Trek. That's how I knew him. You know, I was like, oh yeah, that's the guy who's in charge. Obviously that's that guy. But.
So dramatic.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to cover on Excalibur before we head off to is Legend? What's next?
Legend with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Tim Curry and Mia Sara. I'm very excited about it, actually.
Yeah, that's incredible. Hell yeah.
Like it's going to be fun.
I saw in the trivia for this movie that apparently the opening battle sequence, they had to film it 3 times because the light meter in the camera was broken and it kept coming out underexposed because they shot it at night. And the cinematographer quit the movie because he had a panic attack about it.
Oh, wow.
And, poor guy.
I've never related to that's an absolute nightmare. I've done that. Like I've blown a shoot. The second time I went to Africa, I completely underexposed every photo I took, and to the point where most of them were unusable.
Oh man.
And it was a learning lesson for sure. Luckily I shot it raw, so I was able to save some of the photos. But yeah, I saw that and I was just like, I feel for him really hard. I lost an entire high school basketball team photo shoot once when I was working in Texas. That was a nightmare. So
man,
I just shout out that guy. I hope he's recovered.
Yeah.
I wonder where he is.
Some more cool stuff. Yeah.
If you're listening, like and subscribe. Reach out to us.
Yeah, we'll send a free T-shirt. We'll send a T-shirt. Yeah, some stickers. Well, thanks for joining us. It was fun to watch this movie. As always, we don't turn anybody away from movies. We want you to watch these along with us. We'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments or on social media. So feel free to reach out and let us know. We love the engagement and the interaction with you all. But check us out on Unsung Gems when it comes out, or just check out our other content on here. Anyways, until next time.
See ya.
Bye.